On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina. All right, everybody, I'm here with Joe Hudson of the Boston Red Sox organization. Joe, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me on. I am a strength and conditioning coach with the Boston Red Sox. I'm in High A, the Salem Red Sox of the Carolina League. This will be going into my third season with the organization and fifth overall in Pro Bowl.
So tell me about your journey to this role. Obviously, we work together with the Red Sox, so I know you and I know your background. But just for anybody that's listening that doesn't know, just what was your journey prior to joining the Red Sox organization?
Yeah, it's been kind of interesting. You know, I've kind of tested the waters in a lot of different areas and had experience in the private setting, in the collegiate setting at a few different levels for short periods of time. But I graduated from my undergrad at Plymouth State University in New Hampshire, 2012. And, you know, I have a exercise physiology background. So my undergrad was really kind of geared a little bit more towards the clinical side of things. So everybody else in my class was really kind of into more of the clinical side, getting into the hospital setting. And I kind of found out after a couple of years doing that I wanted to spend more time in the athletic population. And so I was able to intern a little bit during my undergrad, my senior year, with some of the sports teams there. And from there, I couldn't really get a job right away just because I didn't have a ton of experience. So I interned at UMass Amherst, local. I'm from Springfield, Mass. So, you know, UMass Amherst was a big Division I program in Western Mass. So I was able to intern there with football. And while I was doing that, I worked as a personal trainer just to, to start making some money. So I started as a personal trainer. And in February of 2013, I got my first opportunity in Pro Ball with the Phillies. So I went down for spring training, and I worked in short season with the Williamsport Crosscutters. And then I decided that I need to go back to grad school, learn a little bit more, and kind of focus in more on the strength and conditioning side. So I went back to school. I got my master's at Springfield College. And I spent a year with the Cubs in between years of school. And then I got into the private sector. I spent a good amount of time in the private sector, working at some local facilities, one of the Boyle Thrive facilities, and then a facility geared towards baseball before getting back in. So, you know, I've spent time as a pitching coach in college as well. So, you know, I have, while it's all been primarily in baseball, a diverse background from different levels of collegiate athletics in the private sector before getting back into Pro Ball now with the Red Sox.
No, I love it. And the thing I try to kind of harp on with young coaches is to just diversify early. It's kind of the same thing with the athletes, right? Like we tell them to play a ton of sports as they're growing up, and then as they get older, kind of pick one and gear yourself towards that. I think it's the same thing with strength coaches. Like when you're young, work with whoever you can, work wherever you can. I coached a little bit of baseball myself when I was in undergrad. Like just be around kids and be around athletes and learn like what works, what doesn't for teaching them, and then kind of pick where you want to go. I've done college, I've done private, I've done all of that stuff. And then I was like, you know what? I like Pro Ball. I'm going to pursue that a little harder. So it's an interesting path, but I think it's a path more people should probably try to take, to be honest.
Absolutely.
So tell me your best professional baseball story before we get into too much of this. I want to hear if it's a success story or something funny that happened or just your best memory you have so far of Pro Ball.
Yeah. So, when you sent me these, kind of questions to prepare for, I thought of a few, and and then I thought of how I probably shouldn't tell these over, over the airwaves. So, the good ones are probably a little too detailed for this. So, something toned down a little bit more was just this past season. Really just more of a fun kind of memory, but a little bit of a funny story as well. So, being in Salem this year, we had a tough first half of the year. We didn't do so hot. I think we finished last in the first half, but, we really turned it around, made some adjustments in the second half, and, we ended up qualifying for the playoffs. And so in that clinching game, we had a pretty good lead, and we're heading into, I think we just kind of rounded out the bottom of the eighth. We were at home. We were up 5-6 runs, something like that. So top of the ninth rolls around, and our manager comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, I got a smoke machine in the auxiliary locker room. There's just based on how our stadium is, there's a second locker room where a college team uses in our off season." So he's like, "Yeah, it's in the auxiliary locker room. Like, there's some lights in there. Like, go turn it on, get it ready, because we're definitely going to have some fun after this. After the first how we started the year." So I'm like, "All right." And he goes, "Hey, make sure the fog's going." I'm like, "Oh, I'll make sure it's going." So I go in there, and I've only used a fog machine once or twice before in my life, and so I go in there and I'm trying to figure it out. I get it all plugged in and everything, and I just get it going. I'm like, "All right, well, you said you wanted it foggy, so perfect." I turn it on full blast. We only have 3 outs left, so it's got to fill this room pretty quick. So I get it going and it's pumping. I'm like, "Perfect, this is good." So I walk back out to the dugout to be out there for the end of the end of the game and everything. And kind of a slow top of the ninth. We get 2 outs, and all of a sudden we look, and we're actually pretty fortunate. Our dugout goes right into our clubhouse. So, all of a sudden our manager turns around and he's like, "Joe, what is that?" And then I look back, and all the fog was starting to trickle out into the dugout during the game. So I had to run inside, and the whole clubhouse was smoky. So it had gone from the auxiliary locker room with the door closed underneath the door and started, seeping out into the hallways into our clubhouse and moved its way down into the dugout. All the players started looking and stuff like that. So, we get the third out clinched and everything. The players are out celebrating on the field. We're all shaking hands in the dugout, and then everybody comes in, and there's this whole room is smoky, like way too smoky. You can't see anything in there. You couldn't see lights, anything like that. So we had to shut it off, blow everything out. But, it was a good time just because, it was fun to celebrate like that, but also just funny because, everybody started to get the idea of what was going on when the smoke starts, trickling out into the dugout during the game.
That's absolutely incredible. And knowing your manager, I can just picture his expressions and everything while this is going on.
Oh, yeah.
But moral of the story is, if you're a strength coach in professional baseball, you're going to wear many hats, right?
Yeah.
Fog sure. Machine guy, add that to the list of hats that you have to
it's
wear.
going on the resume.
No, man. So this is our second time doing this. The first time the audio did not turn out great. And so since then, you have kind of started your own business in the off season, and I think I want to run with that for this episode. So kind of tell us about your business, who you're training there, how you got started, and then we'll kind of go into some technology and stuff you're using. I think it's relevant. I know myself, like in the off season, I think of things that I could do. And this is definitely something that in the future I could see myself doing. I'm sure there's other coaches as well. So any details you want to share with us, we're all ears, man.
Yeah. So, it's something, like I said before, with my past experiences, I've worked in the private sector for 4 or 5 years, and I've been fortunate enough to really get my hands dirty on the business side of things. Both places I was at, I ran a lot of the business operations as well as a lot of the training stuff. So I've gained a lot of experience in that area. I've been the director of those places, but never really, I guess, fully been able to, I guess you could say, reap the benefits of doing that, just because I never owned anything. So, it was something that I've always kind of had in the back of my mind, like maybe I could start my own place or should start my own place. And, my brother's in this field as well. He's 6 years younger than me, so he's just getting out of grad school. But it's always something we've kind of talked about as well, opening up a place together. And so he's still kind of working on his stuff, and he just got hired into pro ball as well. So he's going to be doing that. But yeah, I just I finally bit the bullet this off season. I had some connections with some people that run baseball travel companies, baseball development companies for high school kids. And, one of the things that he kept saying to me over and over again was, we get a lot of feedback from college coaches that were skilled, that we have a really good sense of the game. Like, a lot of our guys are very baseball savvy, but one of the things they kept saying over and over again is they're small, they're underdeveloped, they're still on the weak side. And so, it's becoming apparent to him that he needed to incorporate some sort of strength and conditioning into the team. And so we had known each other through some mutual friends, and we got talking, and just kind of all the stars aligned this off season, or really during the season when we kind of got everything started. But all those stars aligned, and I jumped in and went for it. There was really no better time, just because of all the other things that lined up, and they were expanding their space a little bit. And so there was an opportunity for me to take on a little bit of space within their building. And, it's a good time now. I don't need to take money from the business, to live and feed my family and things like that. So it was a good opportunity from that perspective to be able to start slow and not have to kind of feel that pressure of, making ends meet financially for myself. So I went ahead and did it. I've had a lot of support from my family. My wife has been huge help with everything with our kids, and, making sure everything's squared away with our child care and everything, so that I can go down and spend more time in the business. And my mom and her mom being able to help us out when she's at work and everything. So it's been a good experience so far. So yeah, we primarily train high school athletes. We have some college guys, a few pros, but our majority is the high school athletes that are really trying to take the next step and, advance their careers to play in college. So we have a pretty highly motivated group of kids that, are just looking to get better. We have some great families down there that are really supportive and excited to actually have some strength and conditioning included into their team programs and everything like that. We're just starting to get into a little bit more of the youth stuff. We don't do too much of it, but we have some like 10 to 12-year-old groups where we're just focusing more on body control and some speed, agility movements, understanding fundamental movement patterns, things like that. But really, I would say like 90% of our athletes are high school kids, sophomores, juniors, and some seniors that are getting ready to go off to college to play. So, that's kind of where we are now. We started small, and, we're growing, which is good. We started with one rack and a set of 5 to 50 dumbbells and, a couple of med balls. And, now we're up to 3 racks, and we still only have 5 to 50 dumbbells because the dumbbells have been on back order from the company that I use. But we got 3 racks and, some boxes and benches, and, we're heading in the right direction. So, it's been good so far.
Gotcha. And then I kind of follow on Instagram. I see it, and obviously we're friends, so we talk about it. But what kind of like technology are you using there? We were talking about like athlete profiling before we got on camera here. Like, what are you using to kind of help the kids develop and kind of give them that full experience instead of just, hey, show up, lift, leave, okay, I'll see you next week or whatever? Like, it sounds like you're giving them way more than just that.
Yeah. So yeah, it depends on like the group that we're working with. But we have taken the steps to really go through what we're trying to make a very detailed like assessment process. We get our athletes in and do kind of like your standard screenings. We use a little bit of stuff from the on-base U screens, some FMS stuff, some range of motion stuff, to get an idea of how everyone moves, what limitations and restrictions they have. And then one of the things I've been very interested in over the last couple of years is creating kind of athlete profiles based off of, certain bar velocities at certain weights relative to their body weight. I'm very interested in like elastic properties. So, how well can they use the stretch shortening cycle? So we'll do some testing stuff with a couple different things. We'll use the push band and measure some vertical jumps, with a counter movement, and then we'll do some static vertical jumps to see the difference between them. And then we will use we've used the push band a little bit for bar speed. I'm starting, we use the gym wears, obviously, as I think that's the gold standard, really. Those are a little too pricey for a small business. So I'm intrigued by the Flex that just came out. I'm sampling one right now, and I really like that. So we've been getting some bar speed readings with that, using the Flex. But basically what we're trying to do is use, and we have, I just started using Blaze pods. So what that is like it's almost like an easy button that lights up. And when you touch it, then it changes to the next, they light up, and you can set them in whatever type of pattern and everything you want, which, there's a lot of things like that at the winter meetings. So I met with some of the people there and kind of picked their brains a little. I'm like, I love this. I would like to have it at my facility. How much do they cost? And, they're like, well, this base unit here with like 3 lights is $10,000. So, a little out of budget there. So within like a week, I got one of those promotional pop-ups on social media of these things called Blaze pods. And, I watched a bunch of videos on them, did a little research, and I ordered some, and I absolutely love them. So we'll do a test on there as well, like an agility shuttle, and I can program that in, and we'll just take the times and record that down there as well. So just to give kind of as much of a full scale profile as we can. So we take all that data, and we're starting to use it to create individual profiles for our athletes. So, I've been very interested in over the last couple of years in trying to essentially bucket athletes based off of like their strength and power qualities, and see if we can find a weakness with a specific quality and train that, as much as we can to get them essentially even across the board. It's tough. I go back and forth with kind of like our training style and how we go about it. I mean, you can plan, out over the course of a year in like a big, kind of a macro cycle on, you have your strength, your hypertrophy phase, your strength phase, your power phase, and go like that. Or you can kind of take the approach of building up specifically for the season. So, our high school baseball players here are starting the end of March. So do you work backwards from there and build it like that? Or do you just start from day one, knowing that there's so much ground to cover with a lot of these young athletes? So I go back and forth with that. So kind of like the middle ground that I've ended up landing on a lot is let's figure out what qualities that they need to improve on. And like, we'll just try and attack those qualities so that we can kind of round them out as athletes.
No, it's good, man. And a lot of the stuff that you're using, I think the kids probably love it, but I bet the parents love it as well. And keeping the parents happy in the private setting is a large battle that you have to kind of conquer. So how about during the season? I know you said you and your brother went in a business together. Who's going to run your business during the season? Are you going to be just kind of like checking in, or are you going to shut it down completely? Like, how are you going to do that once the pro ball season starts?
Yeah, so that's always been kind of the big question. We got to a point this fall where, things were going pretty well, and we had a good amount of athletes, enough to justify bringing some people on to help with some part-time work. And then we ended up getting a contract at another facility as well. So we do all of our business down at Hudson Strength down in Berlin, Connecticut. And then up in Hartford, a little north, we have there's another travel company that just put a weight room in, and they contract us out to do their strength and conditioning for their teams. So I have 2 employees, part-time employees, and we're working on getting them full-time as quick as we can. But the goal is for them to kind of take over and run everything while we're gone. I'll still manage kind of like the day-to-day administrative stuff, but the coaching is strictly going to be those 2. And we'll try and pull in a couple, I guess, seasonal employees, part-time employees, and hopefully some interns from some of the local colleges in the exercise science programs. But yeah, they'll run everything. They've done a great job so far. It's been awesome. I think that's part of one of my favorite things, outside of training the athletes and making them better athletes, is I really enjoy helping coaches become better coaches as well. So, they're the 2 employees that we have are not super new to the field, but they were looking to gain more experience. And, I sat down with them on day 1 and I said, look, whatever goals you have, just like with the athletes, whatever goals you have, like, I want to help you get there. So, if you're only working here for 6 months because you've built up enough experience to go get a job that you want to help in your career, then perfect. Like, that's what I want for you. So, let me know if there's any specific area or kind of specialization that you want to go, and we'll kind of tailor your experience in that direction so that you can feel comfortable applying for whatever job it is. And, the only thing I asked was, hey, as soon as you start looking at other places, let me know, because, I'm going to be in season and I need to find somebody to kind of take over for you. But, that relationship has been very open, back and forth. And, like I said, I want them, just like our athletes, like, to get, accomplish whatever goals they have. And, that's my job to help them get there as well. So they've done great. And they're going to do a good job while we're away. So I'll check in with them on a weekly basis, and, I'll still handle the administrative side of everything like that. But all the training moving forward and assessment processes will be done by them.
Nice, man. It sounds like you got everything kind of squared away, and you started off on the right foot with your business, and it sounds like it's going to be up and running for a while. Do you have any advice for like coaches who might want to do this in an off season, for instance, in pro ball, like maybe like somebody like myself, a strength coach, during the season, in the off season, I don't have much going on. Any advice, like just to start up, or like long-term outlook stuff, anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 things really that kind of stand out, and they were musts for me in order for all the stars to align with this. Is, I think it's much easier to start very small. Sometimes, like, you get, especially us as strength coaches, we get spoiled when we're down in spring training. You get your Sorinex racks with all the attachments that you want, and the jammers, and the RFEs built right into the racks and stuff like that. And so, like, that's what you want to provide because it's awesome. But starting small, I started with like just one rack that was not the cheapest rack in the world, but certainly not a Sorinex or a Hammer Strength rack or something like that. But start small, and you can always grow. It's a lot easier to work within your means, and it's a lot less stressful to work within your means in the beginning than having to kind of try and have to scratch and claw to cover your monthly financials. So start small. And then the other one for me would be try and associate yourself with a group where you almost have some guaranteed clientele to begin with. It's a lot more difficult to, open up a place in a strip mall or, something like that where, you might not get a lot of exposure. I'm very lucky that, we've kind of incorporated into their program, the strength training. So it's kind of allowed us to have some pretty steady flow of income. But always starting with something where it can allow you to at least get yourself off the ground a little bit would be big. It just kind of accelerates the process a little bit. Like I said, the initial phase, like that first little bit is stressful. So, if you're not generating a lot of revenue, it can be tough, mentally on you. So at least if you have something coming in, you're feeling, you cash your first check, or first person swipes their card and you're like, all right, like this business is making some money. It's great. So you don't have to feel as stressed about it, because then you start to press, and it's just like anything else. When you start to stress out and press, then like you're not performing at your best, and then you can't, you just can't be the person that you really, normally are. So those are the two big ones for me, for sure.
Yeah, and I think they make sense anyways. Like, start with a minor league weight room and move up to a major league weight room.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you gotta have clients to be able to put in some of that good stuff. You don't want to have all the good stuff and have nobody show up to your party, right? Like,
For
it's
sure. Yeah, and you can't be afraid too. I mean, one of the things that I take a lot of pride in, actually, and my dad has actually helped me out with a lot of this stuff. But the rack that I have has the pegs in it. It's a very similar looking rack to like a Sorinex rack, with the pegs on all four sides, and we've built a lot of things. A lot of attachments. That you can find at a hardware store, really, and you just weld some things together and it kind of works out the same, and you can save some money. I think, you look online for like the RFEs that slide in. So you throw your leg up on it. They're, the split squat stands that from like Perform Better are like a couple $100. The ones that go in on like, from Sorinex are like 120 or something like that. And we basically made one, just by welding a couple of pieces of metal together and throwing a foam roller on it for like $17. So, easy way to save money, provide everybody with what you need. And it's okay to grow that way as well. You can get kind of crafty and creative.
Yeah, I love that. I follow like a do-it-yourself gym page on Instagram,
Yeah.
and it's just because I have my home gym that I set up for the off season here, and so once you have a home gym, you're like, okay, well I have this, but now I kind of want this, I kind of want this, and instead of like spending the big bucks, I'm like, how can I make this, or how can I find it somewhere cheaper than the whole price?
Yeah, no, that is a very fun part of the job. And then you end up getting creative with your programming as well. You're like, okay, well, like for me, I haven't been able to get, the dumbbells have been on back order, and I don't really want to spend that much right now on the 55 to 100 pounds. So I ended up buying landmine attachments instead for $30, and we do more stuff, landmine rows and more, landmine goblet squats instead of regular goblet squats with a dumbbell. And so, we just find other ways to change our programming up so that we can still kind of change the stimulus and stress the system a little bit, just without, the dumbbells. So that's been cool as well, because you can kind of challenge some of the programming. We all get in programming ruts, so it's a nice way to kind of break out of that.
Yeah, I love it. Like I said, I have my home gym, and I search for something, and I'm like, you know what, I could use this, but I'm not gonna pay the full price. I'd rather like, I think it's part of, it's like you said, it's fun. It's part of the fun of like, I could have a million dumbbells, or I could have a dumbbell handle where I put the plates on it and just load the plates on it. I'm like, I'm just gonna get the handles. So I'm
Yeah.
like, who can I find that's gonna give me some handles for cheap? And like, it's pretty cool, and I got a little Google setup out there, and like you said, it kind of challenges you to program a little differently. And like if it rains outside, like how do I adjust my program in the rain that I'm not like, what I mean? It's just stupid things like that, but it's fun, and it gets the creative juices flowing. So
Yeah,
I'm right
they're
there with you.
all different mechanisms to round out your abilities as a coach.
For
And,
sure.
Facebook Marketplace too. I've been on there all the time. My wife showed me that, and now I go on every day looking for used barbells and dumbbells and old racks and stuff like that.
You never know what you're going to find in the community, man. They tend to
Right.
throw stuff away. So what do you believe in within strength and conditioning that others think you are crazy for believing? I want to transition a little bit now.
Yeah, this I actually had this conversation with a parent the other day. I'm not. I was for a while, but I'm very not anti bench press. Like I don't have a problem with getting our baseball players under the bar for benching. I know that's kind of like seems to be like a taboo thing in our field, but I don't really have a problem with it. I know that, we're not getting full scapular range of motion by pinning our scaps down on the bench, but, I still think there's some pretty good benefits to being able to press and load that up. And, sometimes, especially in the minor leagues, like you might not have the access to a heavy enough dumbbell, whereas, barbells are pretty readily available, unless you're at Planet Fitness. But, so I'm not anti bench press. I think it's actually a really good way, especially for our younger population, to learn like the pressing movement, like well. I think you can really take, you get behind someone and you can really teach them how to press in that type of horizontal push pattern. So we do that in our program here with the younger kids. We want to teach them how to do push-ups just as well in a good push-up, but sometimes the lack of the lack of strength is what is the limiting factor in a good quality push-up for some of these guys. So, we use the dumbbells as well, but I like to use the bench as well.
It's like a debate as old as time, man.
Oh yeah.
You're on one side or you're on the other, and I still think the answer falls somewhere in the middle, man. Like,
Yep.
if you can do it safe and you have good technique with it, it's like any exercise. If you squat like an asshole, like, you're going to get hurt, you know what I mean? But if your squat form is good, you're probably going to be okay. If you deadlift and you look, like a shrimp, you might get hurt. But if you deadlift with good form, you'll be okay. Like, if you bench press and you're all over the place, you're putting yourself at risk. But if you have a good, clean technique with the bench press, you'll be okay. And if you progress it accordingly, I think the problem is some guys want to get on the bench and it's like how much you bench, bro. And it's like, I could bench 400, and then they just load it up and they get crushed. And it's like
at the bottom.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But if you build it up progressively, and like you said, I do think there's a lot of value in the bench press. I really, really do. It's, there's not a ton of other like horizontal pressing where you can get that much load. Like, how much can you really load up a push-up? Like, I mean, I've seen people put tons of plates on their back, or use like different things like that. But, the bench press, you put 135 on, and like, that's a good stimulus for some kids. Like, and then you can build that up forever. You know what I mean? So I'm not opposed to it. I'm somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? It has to be the right situation, everything. Does everybody bench? Does nobody bench? Like, I don't know. Yeah. Does everybody squat or does nobody squat? Like, you know what I mean? There's somewhere in the middle that the answer lies.
Yeah.
So well, it's just, it's that's so taboo in baseball, though, like you said.
Yeah. So a lot of our parents, I'm like, they ask what we do, and we're like, we make sure that they have good understanding of the fundamental movement patterns, and then we try and progress load accordingly based off of how they're moving and how they're acquiring those skills. And, so we want to get them to be able to squat, bench, deadlift. And they're like, bench? And I'm like, yeah, we'll bench. Like, it's okay. Like, their arms aren't going to fall off. Their shoulders aren't going to explode. Like, we're doing it in the right way. We're teaching them about it. And, so we'll go to town.
Yeah, when you touch your chest with a bar, you spontaneously combust. And
right.
That's what people think, I guess. So, but what do you think makes a strength and conditioning coach successful? Maybe in general, and then more specifically in professional baseball.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is the communication. So, every strength coach needs to know how to communicate on a multitude of different levels. You need to be able to communicate with parents. You need to be able to communicate with the athlete. You need to be able to communicate with the other strength coaches that you're working with. So, and just making sure that you have a message and the message is being received. When it comes to communicating with the athletes, like, athletes have different learning styles. So learning to coach to those learning styles is something I've really, been interested in over the last year or so. There's like Brett Bartholomew has a really good course on that personality types and how to coach the different types of athletes. And I really enjoyed that. I think you read that book, right? The I can't think of the name.
Conscious Coaching.
Conscious Coaching, yes.
Yeah.
So coaching different learning styles is big. Not everybody's going to receive the message the same way. So that's why with our staff, I encourage them, like, coach however you feel is going to be the best way. And like, I might have a different way of putting it, but that doesn't mean that my way is right and your way is wrong. It just means that sometimes like the athlete might hear it from me the way that they understand it. And then other times they might hear it from you the way they understand it. So, and then starting to learn how to, use those different tools and keep them there, keep them in your belt so that if an athlete's not getting what you're saying, you can, change the strategy and still, get whatever you need to get accomplished. And then explaining the why. Like I find it's a lot of coaches don't really explain a lot, especially younger coaches don't explain a lot of the why, like why are we doing this exercise? Why is this going to help us? And I think it helps educate the athlete. And I think the smarter the athlete is and the more autonomous we can get them with their training, the better off they're going to be, right? Because, they spend three days for an hour and a half with us. There's plenty more time in the day where they're going to be doing something, and plenty of other seasons when they're not going to be training with us. So to me, I want them to be good when they're not with us. So educating them as much as we possibly can is huge, because we want them to be safe when our eyes aren't there. They're going to be safe when they're in our facility, but are they going to be safe and doing it the right way when they're at their high school gym and nobody's watching them, or whoever's monitoring is reading a magazine, something like that. And then pro ball specifically, adaptability is the best ability. So, you got to be able to work on the fly and be able to adjust and change things at a moment's notice. Cause we all know how that goes, right? So you have something planned out, it rains, they're taking BP in the cages, the bus is coming back, then we're going back to the hotel, and your whole lift and your whole conditioning session for the day is just right out the window. So you got to be able to adapt and adjust on the fly. So that, to me, that's the biggest one. You also, you got to be very good at communicating in professional baseball as well on some of the same levels. But I think adaptability is for sure like the best thing that the best characteristic you can have.
If I've said it once, I've said it a million times, man. I wish everyone could work in pro ball, especially at the lower levels. You are going to find out real quick how well you can adjust on the fly.
Yep.
And you cannot get flustered. If the manager comes up to you and says, hey, I'm bringing 10 guys out for early work at 1 o'clock, and you had a lift schedule for 1, like, what are you going to do? Figure it out. Like, you have to adjust. It's a crazy, crazy game, and there's so many games, and there's so much interaction with people, and it's just every single day. Like, how can you be the same person every day and still be able to make adjustments is huge. I love what you said there. Adaptability is the best ability. It's 100% accurate in professional baseball.
That also works with any other word that ends in ability. So it's very, contextual, right? So.
Well, for us, adaptability is definitely that word.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for others in the field? I know we talked about advice business-wise, but strength and conditioning-wise, do you have any advice for others?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things for young coaches really is that I've noticed, especially with my staffs now and in the past and things like that, sometimes I think people are afraid to make a mistake or misspeak, in front of the athletes or give them the wrong information. And I think, just like we talked about earlier, everybody has a different coaching style and every athlete has a different learning style. So I don't think there's necessarily one right way to explain an exercise or give a cue and things like that. And I think sometimes younger coaches are afraid to say something that might come off as incorrect. But that's really how you learn. So it's how you get a voice as a coach, and, you learn what types of things work to say and what types of things don't work to say. So I think people are pretty hesitant to make a mistake, instead of like making a mistake, learning from it and going. And then, really on the flip side too, from more of like the managerial side and, the owner side of things, like if people make a mistake, like it's okay to kind of talk to them about that. But, I think you can reinforce that it's okay to make mistakes by kind of pulling them aside and talking about it after the fact, instead of kind of like, upstaging them a little bit or something in front of the athletes. So, I think they kind of go hand in hand, really. So, I think you can reinforce being okay with your coaches making a mistake with a coaching cue, or, explaining the exercise wrong. But, at the end of the day, as long as they're not getting hurt or putting themselves in a position to get hurt, they can kind of learn from that. Obviously if it's something that's a big risk, then you might need to make an adjustment with how you're saying it. But you can always pull your coach aside at the end and say, hey, maybe we should try explaining it like this because of X, Y, Z. So yeah, but don't be afraid to make mistakes, young coaches. Like, we all make mistakes. And I think part of maturing as a coach is being okay with making mistakes, and then just learning from them.
Yeah, I would take it one step further, and not even just young coaches, just any coaches. Don't be afraid to make a mistake, because you're never going to have all the answers. At least I don't think we will. Maybe somebody will someday, and they'll get paid a lot of money for it. And you know what I mean? But in the meantime, we're all going to keep making mistakes, and we're all going to keep learning from it. And I think what you said about being a manager and kind of creating an environment where people know it's okay to make that mistake. You don't want to openly encourage like just walking around and handing out mistake badges, but
right.
You know what I mean? Like, if you work somewhere and you're like, okay, if I make a mistake, like, they're going to help me learn from it, and it's not going to be the end of the world, you can kind of breathe a little easier and be yourself and coach the way you know how to coach. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm right there with you. Do you have any continuing ed resources for the listeners, maybe books to read or seminars to attend, podcasts that you listen to? Just where are you going for your continuing ed?
Yeah. Right now I haven't read too many books this year, unfortunately, just with, kids coming into the picture. So it's been difficult to set aside some personal time just to sit down and read, especially with owning a business as well. But I have dove into a new book, Dynamics of Skill Acquisition. Let me see this right here, actually. Keith David's. So far, so good. It seems to be kind of like one of the popular books coming out right now about constraints-led approach, which is kind of like becoming a pretty hot topic within the game. Especially with more of that integration between the strength coaches and the hitting coaches and the strength coaches, pitching coaches. So, trying to stay up to date with that. Other books that I think have been super helpful kind of on from a different front have been more like, mental skills type books, extreme ownership, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. I hope I'm not screwing that up. I probably am. But, and then Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. Those have been like two of my favorite books. And then this one I'm liking so far. So I think that's going to be in the top. So just a few. I think it's good to read books outside of just strength and conditioning, to kind of round yourself out as a coach for sure, and learn different kind of lessons. Cause I think it's definitely going to help all of us in our lives outside of coaching as well. And then, I'm going to On Base U in a couple of weeks, so I'm excited about that. I've been looking at their stuff for a while and been wanting to go. So, I'm finally able to go to that, which will be good. I'm very, very excited for that. And I really enjoyed the Reflexive Performance Reset course, RPR. I've done level 1 and level 2, and they do a really good job of explaining things and, structuring the course in a manner that's really easy to follow. And I think it kind of like looks outside of the box a little bit and kind of takes more of that like nervous system approach than just strictly looking at, sets and reps and muscles and things like that. So that's been good. And then when it comes to podcasts, which has really been where I'm at right now, my facility is like an hour away from where I live. So I've been crushing podcasts. I really like Ahead of the Curve with Jonathan Gellner. That's one of my favorites. And there's a lot of episodes on there. So, you can really dive in pretty deep with that. Strength Coach Podcast. is always a good one for me, a go-to. And then I really like Win Today with Johnny Martin. I think it's a good one. John is somebody I've worked with in the past, and he's put together a podcast. He's a very motivational guy, and he's got some good content on there as well. I wish he would do them more frequently. He does them every couple weeks, and then kind of like seasonally. So I wish there was one on every day that would get me going every day. But those are three good ones that I really like. And then there's a bunch of others, but we'll keep it at that.
The long car ride, man, that's key to have some good podcasts queued up. So
yeah, and obviously this podcast I haven't listened in a while because I'm saving them up for the drive down to Fort Myers. So I got like 10 or 11 of them. So I'll just be listening to your voice for like 10 hours straight.
You're gonna be sick of me by the time you get to spring.
That's right. Yeah, by the time.
Hey man, I know the little ones are sleeping, and this is kind of some free time for you, and I'm taking it away, so I appreciate it. But if you have time for a lightning round, I'd like to knock that out.
Yeah, let's do it. Has anyone ever said no? Like, no, I can't do a lightning round.
Not yet. Knock on wood. Not yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so 4 questions, long or short as you want on the answers. First question, who is your biggest influence in the field of strength and conditioning?
That's a tough one. I had 2 really come to mind for me. I mean, I have some influences, people that I follow a lot that I kind of always fall back on, for content. But both my advisors, my undergrad advisor, Dr. Rosine from Plymouth, he really kind of took me under his wing. I was really like the only one in the class that wanted to be in strength and conditioning, where everyone else was more exercise physiology, like from a clinical side. So he gave me some opportunities to get some experience. So that was, a huge help, and kind of like really kickstarted my passion for the field. So, and then my advisor from grad school, Dr. Thompson, he's referred to by the Springfield clan as the Godfather. He's kind of everywhere, and he's done a lot for the field. He's done a lot for the school, and they do a really good job of putting out some good strength coaches. And I think if you're a strength coach and you're listening to this and you haven't met another strength coach who has some time at Springfield College, like, I think that's pretty rare. Everybody kind of tends to know someone in the network. Those are 2 big influences for me.
One piece of equipment to train with, what would it be?
I go back and forth between the kettlebell and the barbell. I'm going to have to go with kettlebell. Yeah. I'm going to go with kettlebell for this one today.
You can't go wrong with either of those.
It might be barbell.
You can't go wrong, so it's all good. Biggest accomplishment professionally and or personally?
Professionally is finishing my master's. When I came back up here to start my master's program, I moved in with my fiance, and we got a place together, and we were going through that and planning out our wedding and getting ready for that. And then we got married right around the time that I was graduating. So it was the finishing the thesis kind of went on the back burner for a little while, and then I got hired at a full-time job. So I was really trying to build up that business, and then we bought a house that needed a lot of renovation. So, we did a lot of the renovating ourselves. And so the master's hit the back burner for a while. And it took one of my professors like reaching out and being like, hey dude, like just get this done so that you can, have it, like you've already done the work, like just finish it. So she helped me out a lot in kind of pushing me motivating me to finish it. Cause for a little while I just had that mindset like, oh, I did all the coursework. Like I learned what I needed to learn, but to pay the extra money and stuff like that, to not have the paper, it's kind of dumb. So I'm glad I was able to finish that. And personally, having kids was, something new that just came in, a new part of our lives. Last December, kids just had I had twin boys. They just had their first birthday a few weeks ago. So that is an accomplishment and in itself right there. So, having a family and having those two guys, has been a blessing, and it's a lot of fun. It's challenging for sure, but it's been a lot of fun. It's just brought a whole new kind of perspective to things. So for sure.
Kudos to you having the little ones and the business and the full-time pro ball job and all of
Yeah,
that stuff going on. You're a busy man, a lot of coffee in your life.
that's right. Yeah, I got one right here, a full one.
Last one from me. Any career other than strength and conditioning, what would you choose?
I think I always go back to, I think I would be like a contractor, general contractor or something like that. Like I just said, when we renovated our house, we bought a house that was pretty much 70'd out, and, we had wallpaper and paneling and, linoleum floors and, all this stuff that was, popular back then, which isn't currently popular. I had a blast with that, knocking walls down, ripping things off the walls was a lot of fun. Putting it back together was fun, although not nearly as much fun as breaking it. But it was fun. I kind of I created, it was peaceful because you can get to work, you have a project to do. It's, I by no means have like a real strong background in that stuff, but it was very enjoyable. I had a lot of fun, throwing up sheetrock and, things like that. So I think that would be a cool career. You just get to build stuff, break stuff and build stuff. So we kind of do the same thing, I guess, as strength coaches to a degree. So, yeah.
Kudos to you, man. I don't know too much about that stuff. The idea of breaking things does sound cool to me.
Oh yeah, you just got a plaster wall and a sledgehammer, like go to town.
It sounds like a fun Saturday afternoon.
Exactly.
All right, my man. I appreciate you coming on and spending time. Like I said, I know I'm taking you away from having some downtime from the little ones while they sleep. But if the listeners want to get in touch with you or know more about your business or what you're doing, where can we go? Is social media a good spot, or is there a better place?
Yeah, social media. I'm not a super active social media guy. I try and do it, but in my personal Instagram is Hudson_JR12. And Twitter, I'm really good at retweeting things, like really good at it. I don't write my own things. I just retweet what other people say, which is good. That's Coach_Joe Hudson. And then if anyone wants to email me, I'm more than happy to answer any questions or give any advice on anything. You can shoot me an email at joe@hudsonstrength.com.
All right, my man. Well, like I said, I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to seeing you in spring training, and we'll be catching up soon.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, that concludes this episode with Joe. I hope you enjoyed this one. It was really cool to hear him talk about his business. And if you're interested in starting a business or in learning more about his, I would highly recommend reaching out to him. 3 things that I took from Joe in this episode: don't be afraid to make mistakes. Athletes have different learning styles, and you need to coach accordingly. And adaptability is the best ability. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.